Hello and welcome to this week's edition of the Unorthodox Vegan. This is episode number 9. We're going to be making barbecue sauce. Now in the previous 8 episodes we've had explanation about what is the Unorthodox Vegan. That's me, someone who's a climatarian, kind of vegan but not quite, close enough. We made a spinach wrap in that first episode. The second episode we made some vegan mayonnaise in a chipotle mix. In the third episode, talked about foraging and shopping, and we made some applesauce. Episode 4, we made hummus. Episode 5, we made baba ganoush. Episode 6, we made 2 types of white rice and a curry dish. Episode number 7, we finally had some dessert and made some banana ice cream. Episode 8, we made pancakes, and today we're going to make barbecue sauce. Now, someone may challenge that and say, well, it's easy to go out and buy barbecue sauce. Yes, it is, and it's very easy to do. But I don't like the fact that most barbecue sauce comes in plastic containers, and so I like to make my own. And then I reuse those old plastic containers that I've had from buying barbecue sauce and just fill them up with my own barbecue sauce. That's what we're going to do today. Plus, making your own barbecue sauce gives you the opportunity to put in whatever you like, whatever flavors you enjoy. All right, before we get started, let me tell you about what we got for ingredients. We are going to be using diced tomatoes. This is a no-name brand from the Canadian Superstore, Real Canadian Superstore. I happen to like it. This one has herbs and spices in it already. You can get the plain one. I happen to like this one because I usually like this one because of the general flavors it's got. It has in it sugar, salt, a little bit of, obviously it's got tomatoes and tomato juice. It has garlic and onion powders, herbs and spices, and citric acid. So there's a couple of other things in there. What I like about this is that it's got a long shelf life. I'm one of those people, I think I've mentioned this before, I like to have stuff on the shelf that's just ready to go that I can take out anytime I want. And not that I'm worried about being a survivalist or things like that, but it's nice in case there's a disaster of any kind to have canned goods in the cupboard that you can take out and make up a meal fairly easily. So this is one of my staples. I get this one all the time and make sure I have at least 3 or 4 cans available at any time. That's what I'll be using for that. And I will also be putting in some brown sugar, which I tend to buy in bulk at the bulk barn. So I'll be putting in some brown sugar. I'll be putting in some onions and garlic because I like that flavor, just to give it a little extra more body to it and a little extra zest to it, I guess it is. And I will be putting in some liquid smoke. I won't be doing this until the very end after I've cooked it, because if you cook it, once you cook it, it tends to boil off some of that flavor of that liquid smoke. So I'll be putting it in at the very end. All right, let's get started. Now, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to drain the liquid out of this diced tomatoes. I don't want all that liquid in the tomato sauce, otherwise, or the barbecue sauce, it would just be a little bit too watery. So I'm just going to sit there and let that drain out, and I'll let that sit for a couple of minutes, make sure I get all of the liquid out of there, and then we're going to put it into a saucepan. First of all, I'll saute up some onions and the garlic and a little bit of canola oil, and then I will add in the tomatoes, and I'll let that cook along with some brown sugar and just let it simmer for a while, and we'll see what happens. I've heated up the oil, and I'm just going to put in the onions and garlic and let that saute a little bit. So I'm just going to wait till those onions get a little bit browned, golden, and then I'll put in the diced tomatoes. There, getting a little bit of color to it now. All right, in goes the diced tomatoes. Now I'm going to save that liquid because it's tomato juice. Why not? It's going to be good. Use it for something, either drink it or use it for cooking. Now I'm mixing in the onions with the diced tomatoes, and you'll let that cook a little bit, just till it gets all nicely heated up. And then I'm going to use an immersion blender to just process it a little bit, get as many of the lumps out of it as I can. I love using an immersion blender because I don't have to take it out and put it into a blender. I can just do it in the pot itself. I'll be doing that, and then I'll be letting that simmer for a while just to get as much of that liquid combined and make it all nice liquidy. After that's cooked a little while, I'm going to put that immersion blender in there and give it a little bit of a processing just to get as many of the lumps out and get it as smooth as possible. Now this is hot, so be careful. All right, I've mixed it up a little bit. I processed it a little bit. I'm going to be adding in in this case, about a quarter of a cup of brown sugar. Actually, I'm going to add in a little bit more. And get that in there. Get that out of the way. Mix this up a little bit more. And I'm going to put in a little bit more, put back a little bit of the liquid. I just noticed it's just a little too chunky right now, and I want to get it liquidy, and then I want to boil off the excess liquid. I'm going to do that once I'm able to process a little more, get a little bit smoother, just a little bit lumpier than I want it to be. So let's just get that thing in there. I'm going to put in maybe about a quarter cup of the liquid. Get that back in there. Give it a little bit more blending with the immersion blender. Just now I've lowered the heat on this so it doesn't boil up. It was getting a little bit splattery, making a little bit of a mess in here. I cleaned up that little bit of a mess, at least most of it. Good thing the cleaners are coming in tomorrow. But I'm going to let this thing reduce down a little bit. It's not quite as dark as I want it to be, so I might put in some more brown sugar. We'll see how that goes. I'm just going to let it reduce down. I'm going to put a lid on it. Not completely cover it, but I want to make sure nothing splashes out. And let that sit for about 20 minutes. Just let it simmer before I decide whether I'm going to put in a little bit more brown sugar. I'll do a taste test on it, and then look at adding in some of the liquid smoke. We'll see how that goes. I've done a taste test. I decided I think it needs a little bit more brown sugar, so I'm going to put in about 1/8 of a cup of brown sugar, more brown sugar. Mix that in, and I realized that it needed something else, and I forgot that I'd added this in my last episode, or last attempt at making it, and that was some white vinegar, pure white vinegar. I'm going to add in 2 tablespoons of vinegar just to give it just a little bit more. I like that sourness of the vinegar, and mixed with the sweetness of the brown sugar, it just adds a little bit more of a, I'll call it a zesty flavor to it, or zesty taste to it. Now it's a little bit liquidy. I'm going to let that boil down some more, and then after it's finished boiling down, I'm going to do a little bit more processing just to get as smooth as possible. Let that cook, keep cooking for about another 10 minutes. Well, I boiled it down, let it cool down a little bit, added in a little bit more spices. I thought it needed a little bit of salt and pepper, tiny little bit of garlic powder. I added in the liquid smoke, a little bit of salt and pepper, some other spices, and then used a funnel to put it into a container, a barbecue sauce container I already had in the fridge, an empty one. I cleaned it out, made sure it was ready to go. And I'm just going to let it sit and cool down a little bit more. And then let's put it in the fridge, let it thicken up a little bit because of the coldness. But I've already tasted it. It is amazing. It's nice and thick. As you can see that, it's going to be pouring nicely. Sweet, smoky, tomato flavor, a little bit of garlic in there. Really is delicious. There you have it. Takes a little bit of time to do it. It's not difficult. You can add your own ingredients, whatever makes sense. That's it for this episode of the Unorthodox Vegan, all about making barbecue sauce. If you want to get a hold of me, you can reach me at the email address up above, vrcompanions@gmail.com. And you can see all of my episodes on YouTube at the Unorthodox Vegan. Until now, my name is Sean Gold. Have a great day.